No, it doesn't smell like manure. Ahead on Grow, meet the farm girls smelling success as they produce the officially licensed FFA fragrance. Plus, Governor Ricketts pitches his tax plan as a work in progress. And we tackle the problem of herbicide-resistant weeds. Get ready to grow. Governor Pete Ricketts unveils the latest attempt to bring tax relief to Nebraska's farmers. Here's the latest from this week in Lincoln.
The number one thing people talk to me about is property tax relief.
Governor Pete Ricketts pitches his tax plan to lawmakers, saying it would bring meaningful relief, especially for farmers whose taxes are far higher than in surrounding states.
In an agricultural state, this is a problem. It makes our agricultural producers competitively disadvantaged versus others in the nation.
Every farmer and rancher in Nebraska could tell you to the penny what their taxes are.
For this farmer from southeast Nebraska, land taxes that are $10,000 would be half that in Kansas. Nebraska Farm Bureau supports the bill, saying it moves the levels just enough to get their endorsement.
Anything less than what is being proposed would be something that we would find very difficult to support. But it does provide some very meaningful property tax relief over a period of time.
Senators question the process that has clouded the budget impact.
I have no way of knowing what it's going to cost.
The governor's plan would take money from existing tax credits and provide credits towards income taxes based on how much homeowners and farm landowners pay. The details still up for debate in a bill called a framework, open to change.
And that's my commitment to all of you to work with this committee, other pro-growth senators and groups on how we can amend the bill to get consensus to get it to my desk for signature.
Some lawmakers prefer different proposals, including one that would increase the sales tax a half cent and end other tax loopholes.
Raises new revenue, directs that revenue to increase K-12 funding, with the balance going to the property tax credit fund.
Senator Tom Breezy, an Albion farmer, has bipartisan support for a plan he thinks gets to the heart of the issue, education funding, and reducing the burden on farmers.
We have young farmers and ranchers out there choking on red ink.
There's also an effort to put a different proposal on the ballot for voters to decide, something that'll force senators to come together and reach a compromise.
I am optimistic that the stars are lining up for us this year.
Now from state to national, even international policy, as we talked with Congressman Adrian Smith about NAFTA.
The president wanted to take a review of this and make sure that we're getting the best deal. Agriculture has done very well under NAFTA. That is the message I am taking to this meeting because it is so important to Nebraska agriculture.
Some call it the devil's weed, specifically Palmer amaranth, those herbicide-resistant weeds. We caught up with extension educators. Here's our story.
That is very scary.
Dale Nielsen looks for answers to control weeds spreading quickly across Nebraska farms.
It's probably the worst I've ever seen for us.
Enemy number one, Palmer amaranth. Scientists say there are no easy solutions for this prolific weed.
We've got to look at weed control differently. Need to be using burn downs, pre's with residual, posts with residual in some situations, especially when we're talking soybeans.
Outside of the controversial herbicide dicamba, one thing that seems to be somewhat effective is tilling the soil. Jenny Reese points to research showing Palmer seeds buried 4 inches deep for 3 years likely won't germinate. But many Nebraska farmers gave up tillage years ago as an effort to prevent erosion and encourage more biological activity. Some growers may want to weigh that against better weed control.
And I'm not saying that the no-till guys have to go to tillage. It may be something that a one-time thing for Palmer control per se.
I'm not an organic fan, but I'm starting to see where the organic farmers are starting to look like their weeds are more under control with more tillage than we are with our minimum till.
Cover crops are another tool that may help suppress weeds, but experts emphasize all of it together as a whole systems approach.
You need to look at this not 1 year. You need to look at what you did last year, what you're doing this year, and what you're even going to do next year regarding what crops you're going to plant, what are the products that you used, what modes of action.
Nebraska vineyards are especially alert when it comes to the issue of herbicide use, and one learned the hard way how bad the devastation can be. NTV's Jessica Stevenson has our story.
With one of our wines, Celtic Air, that uses the lacrosse grape that we grow.
But unfortunately, about 4 years ago, the winery's crop was destroyed.
Our vineyard was sprayed with herbicide, and so it wiped out most of the vineyard, including those grapes.
He said this set the winery back about 4 to 5 years.
We had to replant most of the estate vineyard here in Lexington that surrounds the winery. We lost most of that, and so, you know, our state was great to work with, our Liquor Control Commission, because they granted us waivers to bring in juice from other locations during that time period.
Nebraska's Department of Agriculture encourages specialty growers to communicate with farmers who use pesticides, and now that's what the winery is doing.
It's been really nice to sit down with those farmers around us and really work with them and educate them about what that does to our grapes and how that affects us.
Cattlemen take their bulls to town. Once a year for the past 11 years, the Bull Bonanza travels to different locations around south central Nebraska. Last weekend, making it to Tractor Supply Company in Hastings. It's a chance to show off their bulls, but also reach a different kind of crowd.
Especially where we're in Hastings this year, there's been families that come in and look at the livestock that maybe you don't have a chance to get this close to them. But our producers are always happy to come and put them on display.
Many of these cattle will be showcased at Cattlemen's Classic later this month. Nearly 1 billion bushels of Nebraska corn sit in storage on farm this year. Some farmers choosing to store it in field. NTV's Sydney Edwards has our story.
These white 300-foot bags are storing grain until owners need to move or sell them. Todd Whitney, a Nebraska Extension educator, says these bags have become more popular and may save the farmer labor.
And maybe less trucking at the time of harvest, because you have a person that's run the combine, and then it maybe only require one other person, possibly two, to keep it continually going through the field.
Whitney says this storage may be short-term, but it has become convenient.
Then you can harvest that entire circle right at that opportunity there when the grain is dried to the point where it can store, and so it's pretty handy from that standpoint.
Whitney tells me that another reason farmers might not move their grain from off their land is because the longer it stays in one place, the value should increase.
And every time you store grain, you lose about 0.5 or 1% because of factors like maybe some of the dust blows away when the grain is there, or you have potentially rodents that could eat on it. You could have all kinds of things that could happen that cause you to lose a little bit every time.
Whitney says the short-term bag storage is only good for 1 year, while long-term bins could serve a farmer for upwards of 15 years. And the cost difference is almost just as significant.
For, let's say, a 30,000 bushel bin, if you were to buy that outright, it may be upwards of $60,000 to be able to buy that. I think we've known of some that have maybe looking at 90,000 bushel capacity, could run you, upwards of a lot of money.
Whitney says possibly $90,000 or more. That's where these bags might turn a few heads.
The idea of using the polymer bags is that that cost is probably about 1/4 of what we would say it would be up front to put those in.
Up next, how would you describe Nebraska's climate? We'll hear from an expert who says it's unlike anywhere else. Later, meet the farm girls smelling success with the official FFA fragrance.